I've added this other line, this other row, because I want to add the possibility of sensitivizing the EBIT. So you should do this +1 plus EBIT reduction. Okay. So for instance, if I want to hypothesize a reduction of the EBIT, I just set over here -5%. Okay. And as you can see, there is a decrease in our EBIT. Let me hard code this. Okay. Okay, so now let's insert a 0. We cancel it, then we're going to add the validation over here. Okay, so we can do this now actually. I should, okay. Those are reductions that I want to insert. So add a go other assumptions about the costs that we have made. So I think that it is, I mean, it's okay. Of the NOPAT is basically the sum of our EBIT and the taxes. DCF. Okay. Let's do the same. The growth year over year. I need this. And let's lock cell of the rows. Perfect. And let's compute the incidence over the revenues. Perfect. Okay. So about the D&A, the change net working capital, the CapEx, and the funds. Okay. Let's start with our D&A. This is quite simple actually. Okay, so I have collected the D&A informations from the financial statement 11.5. And I did the same for the past 2 years, the 2 years previous to the 2023. I've decided to compute the incidence of the D&A over the property, plant, and equipment, and the incidence over the revenues. I've noticed that, I mean, the incidence over the revenues of our D&As between the period 21-23, it's quite steady. I mean, the average is 2.97. So for our DCF model, I have decided to the D&A just to forecast them, considering the D&A for the explicit period as, I mean, computing them based on the historical incidence over the revenues. So the average, let me go on the average of the incidence of the D&A over the revenues of the past 3 years, which is 2.97. Okay, so let's now minus the incidence times the revenues. So let's lock this cell. Okay, but this should be positive because we are adding them back because they are a non-cash expense. Okay, perfect. And okay, so here you can see the share-based compensation because this is costs included into our EBIT, but this is not a cash expense, as you can see over here. Okay, so if you look at it, you can notice that share-based compensation expense is added back to the net income in order to compute the free cash flow, which means that this is not a cash expense. And here we have something like other, but I decided not to include this in our model because its trend over the past years is quite unsteady and unclear. So I decided to exclude this item from our model because I think that it is quite maybe non-recurring. So let's assume that this other I decided to wipe out this item from the model. Okay. So about share-based compensation, I did the same thing as the revenues. As you can see, I decided to model it exactly in the same time, which means that I've computed the incidence of the share-based compensation expense over the revenue for the past 3 years. And let me do the same thing. So plus average of this, perfect, 2.43. And let's add them back to our model. Okay, times, let me block it. Okay, 9.8. Perfect. Okay, so about the change in net working capital, let's calculate the DSO, which stands for the days sales outstanding. It basically means um, how many days there are between I mm, I record the account receivable on my balance sheet and when I get paid on average. So let's link the days in period. Okay. For calculating the DSO, the formula is the accounts receivable divided by the revenues times this 21. Okay, 21, 26, 26, 28. In order to model our change in net working capital, I decided to use the average of the DSO, DIO, and DPO of the past 2 years. Okay, okay. At HH, let's now calculate the days inventory held and the days payable outstanding. Outstanding. Basically, the days inventory held means how many days I keep my inventory on my storage before selling it. And the DPO basically indicates how many days there are between I um, record the account payable on my balance sheet and when I pay my supplier. So this inventory held can be calculated just dividing the inventories by the COGS plus 9 days. Okay. And now let's do the same for our DPR. So let's get our account payable divided our COGS plus the days period, 90 days. Perfect. Okay, so let's now link these days on our input and assumption tab. So 26 for the inventories minus, I want the number positive. For the payable, it should be positive. For the CapEx, I did basically the same that I decided to do for our DNA, our share-based compensation, which means that I have collected the CapEx of the historical CapEx of Apple from the same document. As you can see, okay, this is payment for acquisition of property, plant, and equipment, which is 10.9 to 11.0. 10.9 to 11.0. I've calculated the incidence over the revenues, and I've decided to forecast the future CapEx based on the average of the historical incidence of CapEx over revenues, which means that plus average, okay, the incidence of CapEx, perfect, 2.87. So let me just estimate the future CapEx, just multiplying the sales for this assumption. Okay, they're negative. Perfect. Actually, I should do this formula over here to be precise. I should insert the formula here. RTSF. Perfect. Let me now link here the CapEx. Okay. Okay, perfect. For the funds, we have, I think that my assumption was to increase them by inflation. Yes, it is quite reasonable. I'd say general business planning was inflation, which means that, okay, let me cancel this Excel pop-up. Okay, +1 plus. Here we have inflation. Okay. The change is positive, which means that we have a positive impact on cash, because it's just like we're not paying our account payable related to the funds. Perfect. positive effect. Okay, alt DSF. Let's now calculate our free cash flow.